Thanks for joining us on Shannons Club TV, the show for all motoring enthusiasts to delve into the rich road and race histories of cars in Australia.
If you're not yet a Shannons Club member, sign up on the website where you can also catch up on previous episodes of the show. Coming up, we'll meet a proud owner of our feature car and get some expert advice from the Shannons auctions team.
Right now though, let's take a look at the popular 1980s small cars which helped Ford achieve sales leadership in Australia. The KA and KB lasers.
Looking back on the decade 1976 to 1985, it really is quite remarkable how swiftly small car orthodoxy switched from rear-wheel drive, still widely described as conventional in the late 1970s, to front-wheel drive. GMH had only been making Geminis in Australia for 6 years when the laser was introduced. Ford Australia was fortunate to have a partnership with Toyo Kogyo. An Australianised version of the front-drive Mazda 323 would prove the ideal Escort successor. The 323 Laser Twins followed the template set by the Volkswagen Golf half a dozen years earlier. They were similarly successful too. For the first time, Australian buyers could choose between a local and imported version of the same basic car from different makers. But Ford Australia and Mazda were deadly rivals in the market. The KA Laser emerged from Ford Australia's refurbished Homebush plant from March 1981 with 50% local content and rising. Mark, did Ford Australia think that a motorsport program would actually boost laser sales?
Well, I'm not sure if it was actually a Ford idea, but there's no doubt the laser saw a lot of activity in local production car racing, particularly one-make racing, where it proved to be a bit of a motorsport natural. You know, it was light, small, it was robust, it had good performance and handling, and it was quite easy to maintain. So it was pretty good in that role. I'll get to that a bit later in the show.
The least expensive 1.3 litre two-door laser cost $5,846, just $43 dearer than an equivalent Mazda 323, but the Ford rode on radial tyres. Buyers chose between 3 doors or 5, a 1.3 litre engine or a 1.5. There were L, GL, Sport and Gia variants, and from 1982, the Meteor sedan. Japanese production engineering and manufacturing technology proved a real eye-opener to Ford Australia's planners. There could be no looking back. Rack and pinion steering, with power assistance optional from the KB facelift, all-coil suspension and powerful engines for the class, especially the 1.5, meant lasers set new standards at every price point. Ford Australia's engineers were keen to optimise the laser, which became apparent in the Sport with its updated suspension. When the KB Laser GB Meteor facelift models arrived in January 1983, there was more evidence of the engineers' determination to calibrate the car for local roads. Ride quality was much improved. Interiors were revised, electronic ignition was standard, brakes were upgraded. The new models were quieter. The laser's immediate success helped Ford Australia gain market leadership. Mark, the laser certainly made a name for itself in the showroom.
It sure did, and it played a pivotal role in a future champion making a name for himself on the racetrack. The inaugural Ford Laser one-make racing series in 1985, backed by US tyre giant Goodyear, created enormous interest when it was announced, with generous prize money, solid promotion and live TV coverage of several races. Goodyear was keen to not only provide close, entertaining and affordable racing, but also unearth new driving talent, which was another reason why a one-make format was chosen to give potential stars the best opportunity to shine against more experienced hands in equal equipment. The robust KB Laser Sport could be fitted with a series-approved suspension upgrade and alloy wheels to sharpen handling on the mandatory Goodyear radial tyres. With its relatively light curb weight and moderate top speeds, Ford's little 3-door hatchback proved to be an ideal choice. John, it's interesting looking back at this. Apparently very few laser buyers knew that car had any connection with a Mazda 323.
I have no trouble believing that, really. I think the general public is not all that studious when it comes to discerning between different car brands, but also I think perhaps more to the point, Ford Australia deserves a lot of credit for having differentiated the car so effectively, and of course promoting it differently and so on.
Well, they were able to leverage their brand because back in the early 80s, Ford was a much bigger brand than Mazda was locally.
Absolutely.
So there's probably more traffic in their showrooms as a result.
Yes.
And it was an incredibly successful car, wasn't it? I think it more than doubled the sales of the Escort that it replaced.
Oh, easily. Yes, it was a very successful car.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even mount the case that it was the first time Ford Australia had had a really good small car to sell.
Yeah. It proved itself.
Indeed.
Experienced tin-top racer Peter Dane won the first Laser Series in 1985, which saw plenty of close racing, but also skyrocketing smash repair bills, leading to the departure of several disgruntled competitors initially attracted to the concept of low-cost racing. Even so, the success of the first series ensured a second dose in 1986. Reigning champ Peter Dane returned to defend his title, but seasoned observers tipped a young gun by the name of Mark Skaife as a potential threat to Dane's supremacy, given Skaife's impressive win in the final round of the 1985 series. As it turned out, Dane and Skaife proved so dominant that the 1986 series was soon being referred to as the Peter and Mark Show, as they traded most of the pole positions, fastest laps and wins between them. A troubled penultimate round for Skaife ensured that Dane had just enough points to defend his title at the final round. However, series runner-up Skaife walked away with an even bigger prize, having impressed touring car team boss Fred Gibson enough to be offered a career-making opportunity with Nissan. Skaife would go on to achieve even greater success with Holden and become one of the General's greatest stars. A stellar career which ironically started in a Ford. Don't forget, you can join the conversation on the Shannons Club forums with a host of interesting topics.
My name is Steve.
My name is Christian.
We're from Goulburn in New South Wales, and this is my two-door KA Laser 81S. So we're here in the home of Ford Australia. Although this vehicle was produced in Homebush in New South Wales, in 81 they produced 3,690 in this variant. Out of that, only 12 were white, and only 3 had the unique styling of the red trim. The condition in the car when I first purchased it in 2011, mechanically wise it was great, body wise it's been very neglected. I've since brought it back to original condition. Key specs on the Laser are two-door sports variant, 5-speed manual with a front sway bar that was only optioned in this model, plus all the gear options that were available at the time. My favourite features of the car are the twin carbies, which give it plenty of power. I like Lasers because they're very small, nippy, keep up with traffic.
Dad, don't forget they're rare.
Okay, and very rare as well. The fun part about the car is being able to get in and drive it. I've been 3 trips to Melbourne already this year, 1 trip to Newcastle, and plan to continue to drive it as much as I can. I've always loved Fords. Fords have been in my family the whole life, and this was the first car I bought from a dealership. My future plans for the car is to drive it whenever I can, look after it, and hopefully pass it on to my son Christian.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabon's here with some market advice on the KA and KB Laser. Welcome to the show, mate.
Hello Mark, how are you?
The Ford Laser, Christoph, such an important car for Ford Australia to replace the Escort, and it was the first time Australian buyers had the choice between the same car in two basic flavours. A fully imported one or a locally made one, the Mazda 323 or the Laser. So that's a fairly important car for Australia.
Very significant.
I think it was, probably well adopted and became the sort of family, the small family car really in Australia for a number of years.
So we had a 3 and 5 door hatchback. That's right. 1.3 litre engines, 1.5 litre engines, and that the Sport was probably, when you talk about the pecking order, that's probably the most desirable model, would it be, if someone's looking around for a collectible?
If we can find any today.
Yeah, because a lot of them would have been driven hard,
absolutely,
wouldn't they?
I think a lot of them were run into the ground. I mean, they were that sort of, bought as a, they were affordable, bought as a family vehicle, or, the second car, and really just used, till they died.
Affordable and disposable.
Yeah.
Then there was the KB facelift, mainly a nose job and a bit more of a wedge to it. But there was a very limited edition turbo model, white with white wheels. Now, have you ever seen one of those at the auctions?
I have, but not through the auctions, but we have seen them over the years. And
I think they only built about 300.
300,
very small. Very
I mean, that's probably the one to look for if you can find one. That would be the one to find.
Well, because it had spoilers, it had
Garrett turbocharger, I think.
and it had Recaro seats. So it had quite a lot of nice equipment in it, and I've never seen one.
But it was very conservative. The turbo job was very conservative. They kept it fairly low boost for reliability.
That's right.
I drove one as a press car when it was new, I remember.
Yeah. So, but again, we don't see them, and it's hard to know whether they're held, been held by collectors or in clubs, I guess. But we really don't see much through our auction space at all.
So like limited edition, there was a Carla Zampatti limited edition where they signed up with the fashion designer. Do those cars carry any extra appeal, or they just sort of, it's really the sport models you should be chasing?
Yeah, look, I think probably the sport model is the one to look for. If we can find them, I think driving around today, you really just don't see the KA and KB models on the road. But I'm sure there is bound to be that low kilometre car lying around somewhere that will emerge one day.
And I guess the beauty of it, John, is that there should be some parts interchangeability with the Mazda 323 on which it was based. So that might help if you were trying to restore it or keep it on the road.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm not sure sorting out which one's Ford and which one's Mazda might be a bit hard.
That's right. And there was a gear version too, which wasn't as plush as the Escort gear, but still quite a tidy little car, really, I would have thought. It'd be nice to get hold of one of those.
So it's just trying to find them. I think, it's...
availability.
Availability is probably the hard thing.
So we talk about the pecking order. Turbo, very rare model, if you could find one of those. Then the Sport.
And then the gear.
Yep.
And then down to the basics, I think,
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Chris.
No problem, guys.
And remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest Shannons auctions news on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like a lasting memory of the Ford Laser in competition, visit the huge archive at autopix.com.au. John, reflecting on the Laser KA and KB, that was really, really interesting in terms of the early signs of model, platform sharing, not only just within a group, one manufacturer. This is two major manufacturers joining forces, the economies of scale.
Yes, I imagine there were some customers in the 1960s who realised that Austin Morrises and Wolseleys and so on were all pretty much the same deal. But I think it would take a much more astute industry observer to make the connection between Japanese Mazda and Australian Ford, or Ford Australia. So yes, it was, and it was a particularly successful example of product sharing, and it did pave the way for that ongoing relationship between Ford Australia and Toyo Kogyo, as Mazda was called then, because we then got the Telstar shortly afterwards, which was a version of the 626, and that car in due course also was the market leader in its segment. So Ford Australia went from struggling with its small and medium cars to having small and medium cars that actually led their class, and they had the Falcon dominant as well. So it was three very successful products for them.
And it's really like it drives a stake into the ground in a change of direction, because that proliferation of platform sharing and mechanical sharing amongst numerous manufacturers now is commonplace in the car industry, just because of the economies of scale.
Absolutely right. Yes,
interesting
indeed.
car historically.
Certainly.
Yeah. Well, we hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the incredibly successful Ford Laser KA and KB. We look forward to your company next time on Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.